At $150, the SR Performance lowering springs are going to be your most affordable way to lower your 79 to 2004 GT, Mach 1, and solid rear axle Cobra when compared to some of your other spring options that you'll find in the category. Now, in addition to being the most budget-friendly set of springs, they're also going to lower your car a total of 1.5 inches all around, eliminating that wheel gap and making for a nice even ride height for your SN95 or New Edge. Now, the install is going to be pretty straightforward, but because of the age of these cars and the amount of work that you will encounter, we're going to knock this one up to a strong 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, with a little bit more detail to come later in the video. But let's talk a little bit more about the details of these SR Performance springs. Now, first and foremost, the drop, 1.5 inches on all 4 corners, which, if you've been shopping around for springs for your Fox body or SN95, you'll probably notice this is a drop a lot of manufacturers tend to go with, and there's a big reason for that. It's low enough to make a pretty dramatic impact in your styling. It's going to eliminate that wheel gap, as we already talked about, but at the same time, the car isn't going to be crazy low or slammed and scraping on every speed bump or steep driveway in town. So we know that this drop will obviously help improve your car's appearance, but lowering springs will also help improve some different areas of your Mustang's performance, such as reducing body roll when you're really cornering hard, brake dive when you're standing on those brakes, and finally, excessive squatting when you're leaving the line hard. Now, part of this can be attributed to the slightly firmer spring rate when compared to the factory stuff you are replacing. Now, specifically with the SR Performance springs, you are going to be looking at a 525-pound front spring and a 250-pound rear spring, respectively, but with a slightly softer initial spring rate. And with that said, this is a great time to mention that the SR Performance springs here are a progressive rate spring, meaning the spring is progressively going to firm up the harder they are compressed. Now, this is a pretty common feature that you're going to find on a lot of the springs in the aftermarket, with the exception of a few of those hardcore performance springs, because with the progressive spring, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting that slightly softer initial spring rate just to make things a little bit more comfortable while on the road for all of the daily drivers out there, but when the car gets pushed a little bit harder, some of the performance or handling benefits of that firmer spring rate tend to kick in. But if I can make one suggestion here, is that you do factor in a new set of spring isolators when making the switch to an aftermarket spring for both the front and rear, especially if they've never been replaced. That's because the factory isolators on the Fox bodies or SN95s tend to dry rot and disintegrate over time, giving you that metal on metal contact that's squeaky, it's noisy, it's really not all that pleasant. So the aftermarket spring isolators that we do have on the site, they're made out of durable polyurethane. Gonna cost you around $50 for both the front and rear together, which in my opinion is money well spent, especially on those older cars. Another area to consider is your factory shocks. Now, I know this is certainly going to add to the final price, but if you're still on your factory dampers, upgrading to a new set will really complement the springs, providing you with a much better ride quality, but also improved handling as well. Now, that's because your 20 to 30 plus year old factory stuff is no doubt pretty beat by now, unless you just keep your car in the garage and never drive it. But again, this is totally up to you and your budget to decide just how deep you want to go with upgrading your suspension. But let's quickly switch gears and graze over some of the installation. And if you've done springs before on your Fox body or SN95, then you know what you're getting yourself into. If not, well then keep in mind this will be, again, a strong 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and a few hours to a half a day in the garage or shop just to get everything knocked out. Now, it's not exactly brain surgery here, gang, but there are quite a few steps to get everything in place. Now, you will need a pretty solid set of tools to tackle this job, guys, but mainly a combination of sockets and wrenches. In addition to your lift, jack and jack stands will suffice as well to help you tackle this particular job. You also have to keep in mind here, these cars, and more specifically the bolts on these cars, are more than likely a little bit rusty over the years. So definitely not a bad idea to have some spray lube in addition to a torch, just to help you unfreeze any stubborn suspension bolts. After you remove the wheels and get the car in the air, you can start with the installation. Now the rears will involve supporting the lower control arm and removing the sway bar bolts, in addition to the lower control arm bolts as well, which will allow you to sag that lower control arm, removing and swapping the springs. The fronts, on the other hand, will be pretty similar and will involve supporting the lower control arm and removing the brake caliper to gain access to the sway bar nut and the tie rod bolt. Remove the strut assembly bolts in the engine bay, and at this point, you can slowly lower that control arm down, allowing you to swap springs. Now, guys, anytime you tweak your suspension this much, I'm always gonna tell you, take your car to the shop, get your alignment checked out and corrected. That way, you're not blowing through tires any faster than you need to be, and the alignment will be in check, providing you with the best handling and driving experience. So if you're looking for a simple and relatively inexpensive way to lower your Fox body or SN95, the SR Performance options will be your most popular currently on the site, and you can grab your set right here at AmericanMuscle.com.